idea on what a gumbo is in the definition. For me today in this moment, it's going to be chicken and sausage gumbo. So I like to use bell pepper, and so I'll chop it up and put it here. That way if I don't need all of it, I keep it in a glass jar and it'll keep in the fridge or the freezer until the next time. Then here's my regular onion, celery, red bell pepper, parsley for digestion. Then I like garlic, lots of it. Here is the chicken bouillon, which helps to make the broth richer and more tasty. And then as far as seasonings are concerned, basically it's just salt, pepper, and cayenne. And that's how we begin the whole thing. Well, we have a pot of water heating on the stove so we can bring it all together. Okay, you ready to get started? So when we talk about making a gumbo, like I mentioned before, everybody has their own definition of what a gumbo is. Of course, we know the original meaning of gumbo is okra. Well, this gumbo is chicken and sausage. It's not going to have okra in it. But, so when we start, I use equal parts of flour and oil. And of course, at the end of the story, you're going to have to skim some of that oil off, but the reason I do it is because it makes it easier to stir. So here we go. I'm going to use 1 scoop of flour, just to give you the idea. And then I'll put an equal amount of oil. Stirs nicely. All right, here we go. We're going to use medium heat with this. This is a regular pot. If you happen to use a cast iron pot, you have to be very careful that it doesn't get too hot, or you can scorch your roux. Once you have scorched it, you have to start all over again. So here I'm stirring it. Now I have timed this for this moment to let you know that a roux will take about 20 minutes of consistent stirring. So you're not going to leave the pot. You're not going to stop stirring. When the roux first begins to change, we can call it a blonde roux, and that's used in some other kinds of sauces. This particular roux for gumbo will end up being the color of chocolate. And then you have the right color that you need. On the side, I have a pot with water in it that is going to come to a boil, and then I'll turn it off. Because when this roux heats up, it's going to be dangerously hot, and you're going to have to be very careful when you mix the roux into the water. This is an 8-quart pot. It will make 8 quarts of gumbo. I have heated the water nice and hot. Now, this is roux that I made earlier so that you could see what color it is once it's done. See, it looks like chocolate. And as a child, I've certainly made that mistake more than once, thinking I had a bite of chocolate, and it was not. So, this roux is not hot because it's cooled somewhat. I'm going to put it inside the hot water. But before I do that, I'm going to take the meat, the chicken and the sausage, and put it in the water, because there's something about the oil in the meat that helps the roux combine with the water in a much friendlier way. So now we're going to take, and I could have cut the chicken into pieces. However, if I don't want to do that, I can put the whole chicken in, because before I ever serve this, I'm going to take all the meat off the bone. So you might think, well, why use bone at all? Because all the stuff in the bone is what makes the gumbo healthy. It's almost like bone broth in a way. So we'll just put the meat in here. I'm using sausage. I can cut that later. All of that's going in to help the roux combine with the water. So there it is. I have put it in. Now I'm going to start spooning the roux into the water and stirring nicely and just letting it mix. Now, because this is an 8-quart pot, I'm going to use approximately 1.5 cups of roux. So I might have more than that left over. No worries. This thing will keep for years in the refrigerator or the freezer, so you can always use it again. I like to put it in a Ziploc bag so if I need to take it out, it comes out a whole lot easier. Okay, so here we go. First spoonful, and we stir it in. And we just take our time. And as the meat combines all the oils with the water, so will the roux. Now as I stir it in, I'm going to be very careful that I stir any roux that may have settled to the bottom of the pot. So you want to be very thorough and careful. There, it's doing nicely. Now when you put hot water in the pot to heat it, you never fill it because as you put stuff in, the water will rise to the top. So maybe just half of the amount, half of the volume of water, and then add water only if you need it. It's going to take a little while, but gumbo is one of those slow cooking things. So give yourself time and do it mindfully. Okay, another spoonful. There, and you can see the color starting to change because of the color of the roux. I also like to use a wooden spoon. Not sure why. So when I buy a chicken, I like to get a roaster for gumbo, for extended cooking. And the sausage should be a sausage that you really enjoy. For me, all of that comes from Laplace, Louisiana. Good Cajun sausage. I think that'll probably do it for the roux. Okay. Now that our gumbo is bubbling nicely, the liquid is doing well, the meat is floating there, I'm going to start putting the ingredients in. So here I've chopped up celery. Now, given that I'm showing you all the individual ingredients in jars, if you want to save time, you can also just pile them all up in a food processor and zap them and they're done. But for the sake of this moment, we'll put the celery in one at a time like that, okay? Good. Celery. Onion. This is a critical ingredient. Whatever else you may leave out, never leave out the onion. Red bell pepper. It has a sweetness to it that I like. Okay. Green bell pepper. Nice and colorful. And parsley. Parsley has medicinal uses and it's good for the digestion. There you go. Now that these are in, they'll mix nicely, and I want to add garlic. Onions and garlic carry a nice punch of sulfur which the body can really use, and I like garlic, so it goes well here. And the last thing I'm going to put in along this is something to enrich the broth. This is chicken bouillon. I'm going to stir this around a little bit before I go to the salt and pepper. There, it's going to mix in the gumbo and really make the flavor lovely. Now, cayenne, always use that. Go easy on it because you can always add more. So I'm just going to give it a little sprinkle for now. Pepper, black pepper, also good for the digestion. And since this thing doesn't dispense very quickly, I can just spend a little time with it here. There. Now the salt. Go easy with the salt. You can always add more. And for me, this is about what I need for the moment until I can check it again later. There now. They're all making friends. It's pretty, huh? Gumbo is done, and as you can see, really hot. So what I would do is, once it cools a little bit, I would take the chicken out, put it in a shallow dish, let it cool a little, and debone it, and then put that back in, because the bones have given their contribution to the flavor and richness of the broth. But when you serve each individual dish, you don't want your guests to have to be dealing with chicken leg bones and stuff like that. So there you have it. So now we're going to sample the gumbo. Nice ladle of gumbo over rice. Ooh, c'est bon.